Good evening, everybody. We're happy to be here again.
How you doing? We are talking today about ongoing revelation and ongoing restoration. I'm going to use both of those terms. Sometimes that's a helpful distinction, sometimes not. But let me set this up. Here's what I want to say about ongoing revelation.
Let's hear it.
As Latter-day Saints, we believe in ongoing revelation and ongoing restoration. That's usually implied to be restoration of the church. And so you're probably familiar with the quote from President Nelson, especially if you follow me on Substack or on Instagram. I quote this all of the time because this is very important to me. And the quote is, "If you think the church has been fully restored, you're just seeing the beginning. Wait till next year, and then the next year, eat your vitamin pills, get some rest. It's going to be exciting." So clearly, President Nelson is giving us a message that the restoration is not complete. There are more things to come. And ongoing revelation, I think, is a term that we've used more kind of historically. But ongoing restoration has a different implication to it, that the church is still yet to become whole. So my question for you is this. I think that we as Latter-day Saints tend to assume that the church is whole. Mm-hmm. And we tend to assume that the church in its current state is pretty much a finished product, that it's pretty much done. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree.
Yeah, very good. Okay, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I think it's very easy to feel like we've arrived and, we have everything we need. We understand things. We have a certain knowledge about things. And I don't think that is really true, but I think we just feel that it is. When we compare our church to other worldwide churches, we are babies. Like, maybe not even fully formed babies yet.
Just because the church is so young relative to Catholicism,
right,
or Eastern religions that have been around for thousands of years.
And if you think of how those religions have evolved over time and changed, and, new things have come, they've gotten rid of things, added things, whatever, that is how churches work.
Yeah. Revelation
is ongoing. There's always going to be things changing. I wouldn't want a church that is stagnant, that can't change.
That can't possibly change.
Yeah, that just goes one note for the rest of forever.
Right.
I wouldn't want that. That doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah. So if we're thinking about ongoing restoration or ongoing revelation, it's something that I think we can grasp in principle, but I think once it becomes tactical and real, it becomes something different entirely. Mm-hmm. And so we start to ask, what are the sorts of things that could be restored or that could be revealed? And I think the first answer to that is, we have no idea.
Yeah. Why would we put a limit on what would be restored? Because then we're telling God, hey, you guys can't change anything. We understand everything. We like it how it is. By saying nothing could be restored, we're saying, here's a box and live in it.
Right. So I think this is where the distinction between gospel and church comes in, or between doctrine and culture, or kind of whichever dichotomy you like to use there. Because when we talk about something being doctrine, oftentimes people are thinking about that to mean that is set forever. That is an eternal peace. Mm-hmm. And I think there are probably a very small handful of things that are eternal in the gospel. And there are a lot of other things that can change. We've certainly seen commandments change. The word of wisdom used to be something different. Jesus drank wine. Now we have a word of wisdom that says don't drink alcohol. There's plenty of things that can change. Certainly the law of chastity has kind of been through the ringer, and that has changed. So there are definitely things that can and do change. And so if we lock something in and say, I think that's doctrine, I think that's not going to change, and I think that makes us not be prepared for change when it comes.
Yeah. Yeah. I have this quote from Richard Rohr, who is one of our favorites, Franciscan priest. And he says, God is always bigger than the boxes we build for God, so we should not waste too much time protecting the boxes. And I think that's really interesting. You know, like if we are just not ready for change, like you're saying, if we're just wanting to keep status quo, then we're protecting those boxes that we maybe don't fully understand.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what's hard for a lot of people, is that they maybe have received a certain number of answers or a level of answer that makes them feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we think that, you know, something, I mean, the temple, for example, the temple changes, it feels like fairly often in recent years.
It has changed a number of times in our adult lifetimes.
Yeah, and they now have to put that statement at the beginning that says change is okay and it will be fine, you'll survive, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But like when we feel that we have an answer and then something changes, that can rock us a little bit. If our testimony or all of our belief or faith is in that thing.
Yeah.
And so that begs the question of, where do we put our testimony? What is our testimony in? If our testimony is in our heavenly parents, if it's in Christ, then we should expect change.
Yeah.
But if it's in tithing, if it's in the word of wisdom, if it's in these other things in the church, then we're going to struggle when those things change.
Right. And I think with God at the helm, it's our responsibility as Latter-day Saints to be prepared for even some of the most solid things to change. Even the things where we look at it and go, man, I don't think that will ever change. If we've put our faith into that thing, then when it does change, we get completely rocked.
Yeah.
That foundational piece is torn out. So I think we need to be prepared for even potentially big revelations that are yet to come.
And if our church history is any example of that, like that's exactly what happened for a lot of members in our church history.
I brought receipts.
Let's hear it.
Let's jump in. I think there's a couple of major times in church history when revelation to a prophet has really kind of changed something major and rocked some portion of the Latter-day Saint body of the saints. So one of those, polygamy. I guess we could go both ways on that, actually, when it was introduced and then again when it went away. And so when we talk about the manifesto in 1890 that ended the official practice of polygamy in the church, you have to remember that this became a public practice in the church in 1852, so nearly 40 years. So there was like a whole generation of people that had grown up knowing polygamy, being born into polygamous families. This was a very normal thing. It had never been different for them.
And having it taught as an eternal principle.
Right. So why would they have been so rocked when it ended? Because they'd been taught that it wouldn't. And that's why I think we need to be so ready for something dramatic to potentially, not that it will, but to potentially come as part of an ongoing restoration, is maybe even things we've been told won't change might change. So let me, on the topic of plural marriage, let me go to Orson Pratt from 1852. Now this is from a conference talk. A conference was different back then, but he was speaking at a conference of the church, and this was the first time that polygamy was taught publicly in the church. This is 1852. And if you're wondering why people at that time thought that polygamy would never go away, that it would always be part of the church, this sort of thing is why. He said, "It is incorporated as a part of our religion and necessary for our exaltation to the fullness of the Lord's glory in the eternal world." And then he also says, "We consider it an essential doctrine to glory and exaltation to our fullness of happiness in the world to come." Not leaving much doubt there. He's saying this is, necessary for exaltation, an essential doctrine. And then he kind of goes the other way later. He says, in the same talk, he says, "What will become of those individuals who have this law taught unto them in plainness if they reject it? I will tell you, they will be damned, saith the Lord God Almighty in the revelation he has given."
Are we ready to be damned? Because I'm rejecting it wholeheartedly.
So I mean, so Orson Pratt was one of the original 12 apostles in the in this dispensation under Joseph Smith, and then again under Brigham Young. And so there were literally prophets and apostles that were teaching this is not going to go away. I have more. Should I keep going?
Let's hear it.
Brigham Young says it is from heaven. Okay. The only men who become gods, even the sons of God, are those who enter into polygamy. Like, very clear, crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe let's take a little tangent on that. How is it that prophets and apostles can teach us something that ends up not being true?
Well, they are human. We've talked about this. I feel like we touch on this a lot in our
every
things.
week.
Yeah. So I mean, it's hard because I do think, we have to have faith that that our prophet can commune with God, that can receive revelation, that doorway is open, the heavens are open, as they say. We can have faith in that.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think 100% of the time it's God's voice coming to the prophet and saying, "Thus saith the Lord Almighty"?
Right.
I don't think that's how it happens. I think revelation for the prophet happens the same way that it happens for us. Maybe just more often, on a different level. There's maybe something a little different. But I sometimes get a thought that just jumps into my head. This could be a good thing, like for our kids or something.
Yep.
I need to talk to this kid about XYZ. And so, I think that is that all God? Is it me? That's a huge question that a lot of people have. And, when am I getting revelation and when is it just me having a good thought or something?
Right.
And so I do think that it's probably the same for our prophets. And if we look at the history of the church, of all religion, there are human fingerprints over all of it. And there are spiritual fingerprints over all of it across the world.
I love that.
And so I think that's really important to remember, that they're not going to get 100% of the things right because they are human and they bring their human experience and perspective and all of that. But do I believe that prophets can be inspired and receive revelation? Yeah, that's a belief I have.
Yeah.
What that means for how it all plays out, that's where it gets really tricky. Like this comment.
Yeah.
That's the part that can feel confusing. Revelation used to seem like once declared, why would it change? Yeah, it does get really confusing. And we are taught, follow the prophet. We are taught to follow the prophet and to think that, or to believe that they will never lead us astray. And so, yeah, it does get really muddy. The waters get muddy. Yeah,
you kind of have to settle into a non-dualistic understanding of this. Because if you end up in a place where you say either 100% of the things that the prophet says are absolutely from the mouth of God and absolutely true, or none of it's true and it's all out the window. And again, I think we've talked about this before. You're going to end up in a tough spot because they are human. We've cited Brigham Young. We cited him in other Instagram lives that we've done with things that have been said that didn't entirely shake out later. Yeah. And that's just a characteristic of human beings. Yeah. And having human beings involved here.
Yeah. It is. I do think, like you're saying, we have to have this dualistic thinking and understanding when we approach this. And that is not something I was taught to do growing up when it comes to a prophet. I was taught to just blindly believe and follow, and I think that is one of the most important things that I have learned as an adult is I can listen to what the prophet says, and then I take that to the Lord and I can pray about that, and my heavenly parents will guide me, and I can trust in my personal revelation.
Yeah.
And so, that I don't know, there is nuance to that.
There really is.
Yeah.
There really is. So let's bring this back to ongoing revelation. Gave the example of plural marriage here, how it was very much taught that it was not going to change. And then it did in 1890 with the manifesto. And so I think we can ask ourselves, if the early saints in the late 1800s had that experience then, what could those things be for us now? What revelation could come that would be so kind of ground shaking for us that we go, oh my gosh? Because in 1890, we kind of skipped over this part of the history. I like to imagine that when the manifesto was read, that all the saints kind of went, whew, like, all right, polygamy's gone.
I did hear or find out today or yesterday that only about 20 or 30% of the church practiced polygamy. So even though it was a commandment, not everybody did it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
But we do know, obviously, that a lot of people struggled and even left the church over it, split off into the fundamentalists.
Or, continue to practice it.
Yeah.
I'm partial to the story of Lorena Larson, which shows up in, I think, Saints Volume 2, if you've read it, who was somebody who, again, was raised in the time of polygamy. Her father was a polygamist. She entered a polygamous marriage because she felt very strongly that that's what God wanted her to do, because that's what she'd been taught.
Right.
And then when it ended, it kind of took the rug out from under her. It was like, oh my gosh, okay, can any of this be true if this isn't true anymore? And so I don't want to get way off into left field, but if you start to imagine, like, what are the most dramatic things that could be revealed, I'm inclined to think they're on the table. Women getting the priesthood or something, or
anything to do with women, really.
Right? I mean, there's so much room there.
LGBTQ comes top of mind.
And that's another kind of huge unplowed field where Revelation could come in and make some changes. And I'm not saying any of those things will happen.
We don't know. We're not prophets.
Correct. Last I checked.
Yeah.
No, we're not.
Never have been, never will be. Can we?
We're being realistic here.
Yes.
But I just think we shouldn't be taking things off the table that could possibly happen, because, again, that's putting God in a box.
Right.
And that's making God fit into what we think we understand, being so wise and intelligent as we are.
And I think I kind of mentioned this earlier, but when we bring our human understanding and our human perspective to something that is so clearly more than just human, just us,
right.
We can't even understand, I heard somebody say it today, saying, maybe we're fighting over A and B of which one is right, but maybe it's a letter we don't even know about.
Oh, interesting.
And I actually heard MacArthur Krishna talking the other day on a podcast about, she was referencing the movie Bruce Almighty, which I've never seen. But she was talking about how Bruce was talking to God and was trying to show that Bruce was God or something. And so he was guessing the numbers that God would put behind his back. Okay. And so he was getting all of them. And then, one came and Bruce said 5, and God just laughed and brought out 7 fingers on one hand. And God had grown 2 more fingers because God can do that. And MacArthur was saying Bruce was living in a 5-finger world where, a hand only has 5 fingers. But God is living in a 7-finger world, or however many fingers they want on their hands,
right.
And so we want to live in a world where God can do amazing things, and they can lead us down paths we don't even know or aren't even aware about. But we, with our human understanding, are stuck with what we understand, what it looks like for us.
Yeah, we went and heard Nadia Bowles-Weber speak this weekend. She came to Utah, and it was really great.
Yeah,
she's
good.
She's a Lutheran pastor. And a favorite author and speaker of ours. And she talked about how God is bigger than our ability to mess things up as humans.
Yeah, so good.
And so I think about, us kind of running around frenetic, arguing over these little things and worrying about this little thing and that little thing, and God going, oh man, you guys, we're this little ant colony just hurrying around, carrying crumbs from one place to another.
We're so smart.
Yeah.
Got it all figured out.
Yeah. With our kind of gospel speculation and he's probably watching us now and saying,
they are probably.
Yes. Our heavenly parents are probably watching us now going, oh my gosh, you guys with your Instagram Live, and and they're probably saying, you're thinking so small.
Yeah.
You're thinking so small relative to how big, not in size, but how big God is.
Yeah. How broad God can be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's easy to think we have all the answers and all of the understanding.
We want that as humans. I think that's very human nature to want that, which is why when we understand or feel or see more of the nuance, it feels itchy sometimes and uncomfortable because certainty can bring comfort. And,
for sure.
You know, and so it is hard when you do open. I love the breaking open the God box. I love that concept of just like blowing that box wide open and trying to allow space for what our parents can do.
Absolutely. So I want to give another example. We talked about polygamy. The other kind of big watershed revelation moment in the modern dispensation church history has to come in 1978 with ending the racial restrictions on Man, we have one technology screw up every time.
Yeah, we do.
I had an alarm set. I didn't realize it just went off. So hopefully we are still going here. Okay, so I don't want to dwell too much on the temple and priesthood ban for Black Latter-day Saints. But what I do want to talk about is this quote from Bruce R. McConkie afterward. And this is a little bit long. I'm going to read the whole thing, although this isn't even the whole thing. But I have a large section of it. And I think it sheds a lot of light on what this looks like for general authorities, prophets and apostles in this sort of circumstance. So again, this comes right after Black saints were now free to attend the temple and receive the priesthood. So Elder McConkie says, there are statements in our literature by the early brethren which we have interpreted to mean that Black saints would not receive the priesthood in mortality. I have said the same things. All I can say to that is that it is time disbelieving people repented and got in line and believed in a living modern prophet. Forget everything that I have said or what President Brigham Young or President George Q. Cannon or whomsoever has said in days past that is contrary to the present revelation. We spoke with a limited understanding and without the light and knowledge that now has come into the world. We get our truth and our light line upon line and precept upon precept. We have now had added a new flood of intelligence and light on this particular subject, and it erases all the darkness and all the views and all the thoughts of the past. They don't matter anymore. It doesn't make a particle of difference what anybody ever said about Black saints before the first day of June of this year, 1978. It is a new day and a new arrangement, and the Lord has now given the revelation that sheds light out into the world on this subject. As to any slivers of light or any particles of darkness of the past, we forget about them. We now do what Meridian Israel did when the Lord said the gospel should go to the Gentiles. We forget all the statements that limited the gospel to the house of Israel, and we start going to the Gentiles.
That's good. It's good, and let's just quickly acknowledge there are a lot of things that we could pick apart in that and be like,
sure,
well, that's gaslighty, or, we can't just ignore what happened, and there's a lot of pain that this did not forgive. But to hear a leader, especially a leader like Elder McConkie, who really was like drawing the line on doctrine and being really harsh about it, stick in the mud.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To hear him say something like we did not understand what was going on, that means something. To have him say, forget everything that I said. Yeah. That's pretty powerful. Yeah. And we know his book was still printed. We know the things, okay? We know the things. But this has to mean something. There's one part I want to pull out of here, which is an apostle saying, we get our truth and our light line upon line and precept upon precept. Yeah. And I think we tend to assume that President Nelson sits in his house and has this view of the eternities. Yeah. Or at least like, this direct light. Yeah. This fully intact revelation of everything that should be happening. I'm going to go in and talk to God now, and he enters a room that's all light and, and God's sitting there. That's not how it works. Yeah, and God inscribes on stone tablets with his finger
Their finger. But to hear Elder McConkie say the light and the knowledge comes line upon line, precept upon precept, just like it does for all of us, is really, really meaningful. And so when we talk about polygamy that started and then ended, and we talk about race in the priesthood, ended in 1978, and these being kind of the big earth-shattering moments in the modern dispensation history, what's going to be the next one, and what will be the things from the past that we need to forget? Yeah, and not forget again, because this is not
ignoring the pain or know, whatever.
But what are the things where we will need to acknowledge we didn't have all that knowledge then, and now we do. And so it's asking, what knowledge do we not have right now that we're going to have later? And I think that's so powerful, and that is a fundamental, foundational piece of the restored Church of Jesus Christ. Is that revelation is going to continue, and as President Nelson said, that restoration is going to continue. Eat your vitamin pills.
Yeah, there is a lot of excitement with that because of the possibilities, and at the same time, there's so much frustration with how slow it seems to be going.
Right.
Because as humans, we want it now. We are in a very much give it to me now culture. I have an idea. I want to see it come to fruition right now. And a big organization will never move like that. And 100% there are things that could, like Susan and Cynthia say on it last, she said it, there are 100 things that could happen that could change by Sunday and never touch the doctrine, never, whatever. There are things that could easily change and they're not. It's slow, it's frustrating, but we can also have hope for something different someday.
Yeah, and I'll come back to that idea of doctrine versus culture, or again, whichever distinction you want to make. There were Latter-day Saints, many of them, who believed that it was doctrine that black men would not hold the priesthood and black saints would not be able to go to the temple ever.
Yeah.
And same with polygamy, as we kind of demonstrated, they'd been taught this will not change. They took that to mean this is doctrine. And so when we look at things that I think many of us would understand to be doctrine about, again, maybe it's women or LGBT or kind of pick which thing it is, maybe, something very small like drinking coffee or, some small thing.
Or the way we do work for the dead or, temple work, something like anything is on the table.
Right. And a lot of those things seem really, really established. And it is exciting. The tithing's an interesting one because tithing has not always been the same.
Yeah. And
so that's something that could absolutely change. And it would be exciting. Let's not say that it would be scary. Let's say that this would be exciting and very cool.
Yeah, let's welcome change and be ready to roll with it instead of buckling down and saying, no, I will not change.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a comment in here from Laurie. Good to see you, Laurie. He says, it would seem to me that humans make mistakes, knowingly or unknowingly, and then you learn and move on. It is reasonable to expect an organization to go through the same process.
Because this organization is run by humans.
It's humans.
And we understand that we claim as a church that God is at the top, that this is Christ's church. But it is run by humans. And like that famous quote from, was it Elder Holland or Elder Uchtdorf? I can't remember.
Elder Holland.
That said, how frustrating it must be for God to only have weird little humans to work with, And
again, this is another non-dualistic piece. I think both these things can be true. I think Jesus Christ can stand at the head of this church, and humans can run it on the day-to-day and mess things up. I think both those things can be true. I don't think you have to pick one.
Yeah. That is really hard, though.
It's really hard.
Yeah. I guess that's the daily choice. We have to choose daily of, are we going to do this? Are we going to keep going? Are we going to have faith and hope and all of those things amidst all of the struggle and the hardship and the pain and all of that?
Yeah, holding those paradoxes is challenging.
And, you know, not saying that people that don't want to hold that anymore have chosen poorly. That is not what we're saying at all.
Right.
We get that. We understand those choices and what people have to do. It's just all hard. So that's where grace comes in.
Absolutely.
We have grace for everybody, wherever they are, whatever choices they feel they have to make, to be like okay inside.
Right. Including grace for ourselves and the decisions that we make and feel that we need to make.
Yep.
So I think that's going to do it for today. This was a pretty robust conversation.
Yes, I think you say that every time.
I do. I get very excited, guys, about our conversations. Really appreciate you guys joining us, jumping in the chat. We really do enjoy spending this time with you.
Yep. Okay, see you next week.
See ya.